What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel today. I have a second tips and tricks video here for you today. Earlier we talked about mound visits, and right now in my Pittsburgh Pirates franchise we've actually reached the trade deadline, which is July 30th or 31st. I don't know how many days are in July off the top of my head, but regardless of that, we have reached the trade deadline and passed the trade deadline. Now, a really important topic comes up once you've passed the trade deadline, something that you're going to be interested in, because you're going to get this pop-up that says all these good players have been placed on waivers, and you have the ability to claim them here in August as soon as you hit August in your MLB franchises. Now, the really important thing to note here is that there are two types of waivers that happen in August. There is irrevocable waivers and revocable waivers. Now, the first time that these players are placed on waivers, which is right now, which is the screen I'm looking at, these are revocable waivers, and I'll talk about that in a second. But if nothing happens with these players, or their waiver wire is revoked, their waiver line is revoked, then they can be placed on irrevocable waivers later, which means that they can't be revoked later on. And I'll talk about what that implies here in a second. So, the first time these players are placed on waivers, they're revocable. So, what this means is that every MLB team has the option to place a claim on every single one of these players that is placed on waivers. And the team that has placed these players on waivers, if somebody claims one of these players, they have three options. So, the Angels, for example, have placed Blake Treinen on revocable waivers here. And what that means is that they have the option of, number one, to revoke the waiver if they don't come to an agreement with another team. And what I mean by that is option number two is they can then come to a trade agreement with another team on what that player can go to the other team for. And basically what I'm saying is, if they don't come to an agreement on what that player is to depart the team for, they can then revoke the waiver. And so essentially what this is saying is, this is like another form of trade block, the revocable waivers are. And this is this team saying, hey, we want to get rid of Blake Treinen, put a claim, everybody that's interested, put a claim in on this player, and we will begin to negotiate trades and determine if we can find a suitor for this player. Now, there is an interesting thing, an interesting clause to this, is that there's an order of who gets precedence in this. And say it's an NL team, the worst team in that same division, the worst NL team, takes precedence, and then it goes all the way through all the NL teams, and the 14th team would be the best team in the NL. And then the opposite league, which in my scenario that I'm talking about here, is the AL. The worst team in the AL gets 15th in the precedence list, and then the best team in the AL gets very last in precedence. So what that's saying is essentially just, if an AL team puts a player on waivers, the worst AL team takes precedence on that. And if the worst NL team places a player on waivers, if an NL team places a player on waivers, the worst NL team takes precedence. And that's just based on who all submits a claim for this player. And okay, so then we have to talk about point number three, or option number three, that team has in order to do something with this player. So we talked about the team that put this person on waivers can revoke the waiver, they can negotiate a trade, and then number three, they can let that player go for nothing. So if a team feels that they don't want to pay this player anymore, say maybe an aging player, there are a lot down here. If I go down here into like the 60s, you'll see guys that are on probably bigger contracts. Guys potentially like, let's see, where was, I know Hunter Pence was down here. But there are quite a few down here. I don't know, maybe Francisco Liriano, who's on like a $1.8 million deal, but there are worse contracts than that down here. If you find a player that is on potentially a bad contract, so Hunter Pence is on $2 million, for example, these guys can just say, regardless of who claims them, we're just going to let him walk. We don't even need to negotiate a trade for that. And that's the third option on that team. And so you guys are going to want to know this, because what's going to happen is you're going to see all these good players pop up, and you're going to be like, yeah, I want Blake Treinen, or I want Josh Donaldson, and I'm just going to claim them. But it's not that simple. Generally speaking, what's going to happen is they're going to then ask you to negotiate a trade, and you may not even get to negotiate the trade, because there might be somebody with better precedence than you. So, for example, me, I have a very good record. Anybody that's a worse team that's going to negotiate with this team is going to take precedence over me, and I'm not really going to have a shot necessarily at all these players. But with that being said, there's nothing wrong with going ahead and shooting your shot and at least attempting to claim these players. So anybody that you think could help your team, go ahead and put a claim in on, and if you can't come to terms on a trade for that player, then it's just ended and they can revoke it, or I believe they can negotiate a trade with another team. So that's pretty important. And then the other thing that you want to talk about is those are revocable waivers. Now, if, for instance, they revoke the waivers for Blake Treinen and they decide to hang on to him for a little while. They didn't find the right trade suitor, or they decided they didn't want to let him go. What they can then do is, at a second period here in August, is there will be a period for irrevocable waivers, and they'll be able to place Blake Treinen on irrevocable waivers. And then the only options at that point is they can either negotiate a trade or let him go for nothing. And so that's the really important part about it. So I want you guys to know, if you're putting in claims on these guys and you're not getting to negotiate for them, or you're not getting them on your team, I want you to know why. And that's because when you first hit this screen, these are revocable waivers, and other teams may take precedence over you in getting to negotiate a trade for these players. And a lot of these players, their waiver claim may be revoked if the teams aren't getting or seeing the right trade package that they are desiring. So that's really important for you guys to know. And it is really important for you guys to know that there is a second period for irrevocable waivers. I don't know how utilized it will be in MLB The Show 19, because I'm obviously not at that point yet, but as you can see, there are quite a few really good players here on revocable waivers. So if you have the capital to make a trade for one of these players, certainly go ahead and put in a waiver claim. I know I'm going to personally put in a waiver claim for some of these guys. I know personally I want to put in a waiver claim for some of the bench players. Potentially, if I go down and I look at, I had noted one or two down here that I was specifically interested in. So if I go to, where's he at? Sam Dyson was a pitcher that I have been particularly good with in the past. And then there were a couple other guys that I think I'm pretty good with. Jordy Mercer, I know I can bat with, and is a good defensive rotational type of player. If I want bench players to play, I might go ahead and put in waiver claims for some of these people. Gerard Dyson, a guy that's just got super speed, another one. So these are ones that you might want to put in a waiver claim for, that you might not expect other teams to put in waiver claims for, and you might be able to negotiate a nice little trade there. But the important thing to note is, from my understanding of the rule, is that if you do a past August 31st trade, these players can't play on your playoff roster, so I want you to keep that in mind. These players won't be able to play for you for playoffs. They'll be able to carry you to the playoffs and stay on your team until playoffs, but you won't be able to utilize them on your playoff roster, so that's really important to note. And then the final point that I want to note is that this only applies for people that are on the 40-man MLB rosters. If there are players that are not on the 40-man roster, supposedly they can be traded at any point in time. Now, I don't know if it works out that way in MLB, because I know that they put a hard trade deadline, so I don't know if it will allow you to continue to try and negotiate trades for, Triple A, Double A, Single A players that aren't on the 40-man roster. That's an interesting thing that I'm going to go ahead and look into once I put in some waiver claims here. But I just wanted to get you guys the details on what these waiver claims are, how you do a waiver trade, and everything like that. So to let you guys know that you can also do this with your team and potentially get offers from other teams and revoke those waivers if you so desire. So hopefully this helped you guys out and educated you guys a little bit on the rules. If you want to read up a little bit more on it, there's lots of good stuff online, lots of other YouTube videos to educate you on it. So there's not a lot of people are knowledgeable about this, and I had to do a little bit of research to kind of clear up some things that I was fuzzy on before I made this video. So I hope that this helped you guys out, though. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like down below. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment as always. I really do hope that this helped you guys out. If it did in any way, like I said, leave some feedback. I apologize, I'm out of breath. So I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you have a great night. See you in the next one.